Thanks, Aditya, for a good introduction. And I'm so glad so many of us have turned out on a weekend morning. As Aditya said, the first book is out in the market, and I think it has been a very special entrepreneurial journey. If I have to be honest, it was almost like thinking about a business and thinking about various aspects of building a business. So today, I what I have on the table is my doubts, my story, why this book, what were the steps, and how my first book, saw the light of the day. When I was starting to write it, I was trying to find out the right editor, publisher, etc. And someone in that course said that I think it will change very quickly, but writing a book is the second most sought after dream globally. Number one being a millionaire, of course. So that thought stuck in my mind. That you leave it. Now, the number one thing has to be, of course, the idea. In my personal opinion, we are all very good writers in terms of writing, as Madhulika was saying, LinkedIn posts, Twitter. But what does it take to write a book is something that you are very passionate about and something that you already know enough. I think that is a much easier path to writing a book. Sure, I can write a book about best financial instruments globally, but do I know enough about it? Possibly not. What do I know enough about is macroeconomics, and therefore something that I've been doing day in day out, where content comes easy to me. If I were to just turn off everything and speak on that, will I be able to go on for 2 hours? Possibly yes. That is I think, a very starting point of your book writing journey, where you have an idea which not only you believe in, but you have enough content on it. You have enough thought about something. And secondly, of course, you are trying to solve a problem. So my book, The Macro Fair, is about macro investing to do. And it is differentiated to me is because I used to meet a lot of people who used to ask me, what do you do as an economist in the capital markets? What me is good, but why 53 is good, 50 or 49 is not good? A lot of CEOs, etc., would make the comments that I would want to learn it, but there is not enough time. This feels like a thing, gray matter. And I think all those thoughts over the years just stuck with me, in which I felt like simplification of macroeconomics could be a good thing. Now, the biggest challenge of writing a book, unlike writing a blog, is that it's written, it's out, it's done and dusted. So you can't really customize it for your audience. You will think that your audience would be someone who is very interested in knowing the concepts from the scratch, and you will also end up getting that book in hand of someone who already knows that stuff. And the feedback you will get from two of these personalities can be very, very different. Okay, the first one would find possibly some value add. The second one could say, oh, I already knew this, so why did you write this? And this is too basic. So navigating from this is too basic to this is an actual value add is a very, very strong challenge, because as we write blogs, we can always write a short blog. We can write a blog for a nursery student. Next day, I can wake up and write a blog for a PhD student, and it's very doable. But once you've written a book, it is that is cast in stone, cannot be customized, and therefore the kind of feedback, or knowing your audience, etc., becomes important. But having said that, sometimes in my personal opinion, knowing your idea knowing your exact audience cannot be very well defined. You will obviously have a broad set of audience you want to cater to, but who will pick up your book at the airport, or who will order it from Amazon, is beyond your control. So there has to be parts of the book that is interesting to different level of people and different levels of intellect, especially if it's a technical topic. Secondly, in a very, very personal opinion, one should write what they know about, what they are passionate about. And if we are sitting in a finance author workshop, let me also tell you, writing technical stuff can be a notch easier for some of us than non-technical stuff. So, in my personal opinion, if I were to write a fiction book, I would probably rewrite until it sounds beautiful to me. But in a a finance book or an economics books, you have the liberty to just get the facts right and not worry a lot about flowery English. I mean, English and language and the way the book speaks to the person is super important, but content takes precedence over language. So know your personality, know where your skill is. If your skill, play with it. So that's about idea in nutshell. I would say just write something where you can just speak nonstop for an hour. So something that really appeals to you. Uh, in my personal opinion, again, I would say that structure is very important. Before you write your first word, you should know the story that you're gonna build, because books are usually very interrelated. Okay, so if I'm talking about effects of inflation without doing a chapter on inflation, uh, it's not fair. So the sequencing, the structuring is important. Also, very, very honestly, most of us want to write a book which looks decent, has a decent look and feel. So maybe you're trying to write about 200 pages or 250 pages. You will go to a bookstore multiple times picking books and seeing that this is what my book should look like, this is what my book should feel like. To achieve that, you have to also plan ahead of time. So I have had friends who've been writing a book, and they end up writing like 120 pages, which feels like a very thin booklet, and they really did not want to publish it, so they had to kind of do book review section or references sections for the last 80 pages. I don't think that was visible. In my case, I knew that if you were to write a book of about whatever 250-ish pages, you need about 45,000 words. So how am I gonna write those 45,000 words? What's the idea? In my case, I wanted to do 10 chapters. So every time I would do a chapter, in my head, I would be like, it has to be close to 4,000. And having worked where precision is the key, you really do not want to fill up those 4,000 words. So you are very careful in writing what you are writing, and you inherently know that certain chapters, like in my case, monetary policies are big chapters. I think that went to 6,000 words, which gave me a liberty to write two sections or two chapters at a lower word count. Uh, so precision is important, which means that if you're running very short of the word count and you don't want to publish a booklet, you want your book to look like a book. I think engaging in stories is a very good option. Engaging in personal experience is a very good option. So, I mean, the thing I did not like about macro books, and the reason I felt like writing this was important, is because despite having a couple of degrees in economics, I have never been taught economics in a relatable way, one. And secondly, every time it was econ content, it was linked to a developed economy. Mostly it was linked to US. So they would talk about Phillips model and Taylor model, and they'll talk about US monetary policy, but things in India work very, very differently. And therefore, I was very clear that I want to write economics from a context of an Indian investor, from a context of an Indian market economist. So, if you are doing that, if you put in your personal story, that makes enough for a lot of us. So, in my book, in my personal case, I almost always start a chapter with a story then try to build it up on the concept, and just say that on 12th of every month, when the inflation data comes out, when the IIP data comes out, what are the things looking like, and what is my desk job, what are the weights, what are the baskets, what am I analyzing, what is the effect on the asset class, etc., but purely from a more Indian or a domestic landscape. So knowing structure is important, knowing your word length, knowing the page length, etc., whether you'll do a 5 by 7 book or you'll do a 6 by 9 book. Mostly, people will tell you in terms of publishing that your books need to be in line with the international standards if you want to list it on Amazon.com, etc. So you have to choose with that. And those are important things to keep in mind, especially if you're writing your first book. I didn't know about all of this. And I think I invested a lot of time in figuring this out. So your word count, number of chapters, and what comes first, what comes later is important. Of course, take feedback very, very seriously. Uh, I ran my books to a few people, and they would just say very small things like, you mentioned something, but I don't know what this means, which essentially made me write an appendix with definitions. Someone gave a feedback that somewhere you write, I think, somewhere you write, we think. It's very confusing as a reader. Very, very small things, but I think they all add up and make a huge difference. So taking feedback seriously is very important. If you are someone like me, again, who works full time or was working full time when I was writing this book, uh, getting help was very, very important for me. To be fair, I've been wanting to write this book for like 2 years, but I eventually only ended up writing this book when I had my editor and a publisher finalized. So, once you paid to someone and they're following up with you, that's where your real commitment may start for some of us. Um, I mean, I have two learnings here. One, you need an editor who is very well versed with the subject. Okay, so if you work with a generic editor, or if you work with an editor that a publisher just gives it to you, uh, your book may lose a lot of its essence. So having an editor who actually understands the subject and will not, prioritize grammar over meaning is very, very important. So I think the most important part of writing a finance book or an econ book has to be an editor, because what happens is that in working a few hours at your day at your desk job and then coming back and you're writing a book, you very well know that when inflation falls, bond yields decrease. But because you are writing your like 100th page now, you can write inflation falls and bond yields increase just by virtue of a mistake, which can be a blunder. So avoiding that, you need someone who understands your contract. That increase or decrease cannot be picked by a generic editor. It can only be picked by an editor who's proven that subject. So invest in a right editor. I think I went around speaking to maybe, I don't know, like about 15 people before I finalized my editor for the book. So that is super important. The publisher is very, very important in other aspects um, of your book. And in hindsight, I feel like even though my publisher, I think, does a very, very decent job, if I were to do it all over again, I probably would, figure out more ways and aspects of publishing if I had more time at my hand. But essentially, the publisher is the one who gets your book on every platform. They are the ones who make sure the book gets shipped format, etc., is all taken care by a publisher. Today, there are many, many self-publish platforms that are available as well. Unfortunately, I did not try one of them, but I believe they could be really great as well. For my first book, I wanted to make sure everything is done with some expertise, and I have some human contact whom I can, get in touch with, know, make suggestions, discuss, etc. So I went for a publisher, but I think self-publishing can also be a very good way to do this. Um, a lot of time, I see there is a very overemphasis on the time factor. Okay, whether I'll write this book on 3 months, 6 months. Uh, a lot of people told me you have to write between 4 a.m. and 6 a.m. for some reason. That's the most productive time. I don't think so any of it matters. If you are consistent with your writing, and if you know what you are writing, and you are able to maybe write some amount every week with consistency without breaking that streak, I think that should be enough. My biggest challenge and something that I suffer even today was marketing. So, as I said at the start of this call, it's almost like building a business. Suddenly, your publisher will ask you what is the pricing that you want to put, and you have no idea. Someone like me, I was just like, oh, um, so pricing. How do you want to reach out to people? Do you want to have a physical presence in the bookstores? Do you only want it to be online? I mean, Kindle, Amazon, etc. sell really, really well. But you can never ignore the business travelers, especially in a finance book, to catch it on airports, etc. So the biggest challenge for me and continues to be has been the marketing. How has my book sold today? Largely by word of mouth. So I mean, some of us who I mean, I'm blessed to be active on social media. It's not like I got on the social media because of this book. I was always around on Twitter and LinkedIn. I have connections who have very good Twitter and LinkedIn followers. Um, that does help. I have currently sold close to 700-800 copies very, very organically. And as I spend time at a B school, I'm also thinking how I want to amp up my marketing and do things. But word of mouth, having people who will endorse you is extremely important. Amazon reviews can be very important as well. So I have woken up to very good reviews on my phone. Someone said it, it just made everything clearer to them, etc., etc. But the thing is that people give you good feedback in person and bad feedback behind your back. So nobody ever texted me saying that, oh, this is too simple. Uh, Literally nobody. Everyone who wrote to me, texted me, WhatsApp me, tweeted me was full of appreciation, and that's how the book is placed. But if I go to my Amazon reviews now, I will definitely find 2 3 people who've written it's very simple. As much as I would love to engage with that audience, I cannot. So the bad side of feedback is that the good bad feedback doesn't come to you in person. That has been my experience and as well as a challenge. So Amazon reviews matter, and like the more the reviews, your book gets started to promote on Amazon. Secondly, you can do some starter promotions. Your publisher would have certain plans where it gets a A+ listing. There's a banner. There could be some discounts at the start of the once the book is launched. So all of these are very I think they are good tools, but I think, in my personal opinion, nothing does better than word of mouth. If 10 people who read your book are influential enough and they put that out that it adds value to them, everything else becomes immaterial. And over time, you try to get your book reviewed by certain media platforms, journalists, etc., which again adds value, adds credentials to your book. Um, it's also about where in marketing do you want to spend money on. I mean, ever since I've written a book, I have like 10 messages every week with some, book review blogger asking me to review the book at X price. My personal feeling is that I mean, I'm not invested in any of those. I don't think so those work really well. But I think if you do like targeted ads on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, etc., those could really add value to some of them. So personally, my two bits on marketing is that it was a big challenge only because I did not invest money in it or did not have a professional in it, because my faith, uh, I have read books people have told me about, and therefore borrowing from my personal experiences, I think people tend to read book someone who they believe in has said has good content. So word of mouth is number one. Just make sure people uh, who are experts on the subject get a chance to read your book, and if they like it, they put out a good word. That works the best. And do not overthink the pricing. Pricing at later stage can take a lesser bandwidth of an author once they are just trying to set up the infra. Uh, Someone told me at the very start of this journey, there is nothing like the best read book. There are only best selling books. So I mean, he himself is a very good writer, and he was like, a lot of people will say a lot of things about your book. A book is also, putting yourself out in the public in a way. And it's very difficult to describe that feeling until you've done it. So I thought like writing a book would feel like an achievement. But on the day of my book launch, I was terrified. Simply because there is always this thing about putting yourself out in the public and thinking that, what if you made one typo, one mistake, someone on Twitter will troll you, someone on LinkedIn will tag you. Social media does have benefits, but the chances of this cannot be ignored. So make sure that your book reaches the masses. Feedback is very important if it comes from the right people, but making sure to have a best read book is very difficult. So you need to have a best selling book at some point. Uh, Finally, and I wouldn't take a lot of time on this, but defining a purpose for your book is very, very important. While you can have many benefits from writing a book, I have had friends who've written a book for their personal branding. I have had friends who've written a book uh, because they wanted to make money, and and there was me who just wanted to uh, when I started this journey, my only goal was that, listen, I'm an economist. I may not be an economist after my business degree. What I know today, I want to pen it down. So all three are very different goals. The kind of effort that goes into writing for these goals, marketing for these goals are very different. So the big question to ask yourself is, why am I writing this book? If you're writing for personal branding, you can advisably so write a book, not make it very high priced, and make sure it reaches right kind of audience, in which case could be media, could be author events, could be forums. But if you're writing to make money, that's a different ball game altogether. Being a author and making money, I think it's a hard thing to do, in all honesty, especially if you invest in like a good publisher or a good editor. In which case, the pricing of your book, the number of in my case, this book is perfect for students. So number of colleges you reach out, number of bulk orders you can have, number of corporates who are willing to gift your books, etc., would become very, very important. So don't deviate from the purpose. I would say, because the two purpose of one of making writing a book for personal branding, and second of making money, are very different, and it's better to chase one and let other be a very standardized process. Um, in my case, I just wanted to write a book, but in all honesty, once I had the book, I wanted the branding and the money out of it as well. In which case, I felt, and this is why I put this question down there, that that's not the mistake worth making, because if you've written for a purpose, chase that purpose, and that really does add value to the whole book writing journey. So this is how my book ended up looking like. I would say everything here is the work of the publisher. the color, the scheme, uh, what goes in, the ISIN, pricing, everything is done by publisher. Today, I'm sitting in Singapore, but if my book sells in India, sells on Amazon.com, etc., etc., I have nothing to worry about. I'm just here. I think in self-publishing that could be a bit of challenge. So uh, one needs to evaluate how much of bandwidth do we want to give, and how much of the work that we feel comfortable outsourcing versus doing it ourselves. So um, that was the things that I think mattered to me on writing my first book. There were certain factors I wasn't aware about at all. I didn't know I didn't know different models of publishing house. I didn't know different models of, author royalties. It's very difficult to compare publishing houses. So I think if you're writing, I mean, I made that mistake, and I wouldn't say in my case I was writing, and until then I decided to then find an editor and a publisher. I think it's better to start with your editor and your publisher, knowing the structure, and needless to say, speak to a lot of people about your book, even when you are writing it, even when it's not done. A lot of times we have this fear that, I'll talk to a lot of people, but if it doesn't come out, then uh, so be it, basically. Because sometimes when you make that conversation, people tell you what could be interesting for them in a context in a book like that, and that helps you to write even better content. So speak to a lot of people on what they think. If you were to write a book on, breaking down macroeconomics indicators, what would be their thought and reaction, like what is it that they would like to see. I think that kind of feedback is very, very important. With that, I will end my short chat. As I started by saying, I'm here to share my personal journey that I just completed, and I think I'm still on it from the marketing perspective. But any questions, thoughts, and anyone who's willing to or wishing to write a book, feel free to know I'm always around for help and to share more of my contacts and the information that I've gathered over the past year or so.
Right. So, audience, any questions? Please go ahead. Ankita, one line that will stay with me is there's nothing like a best read book. It's best selling book.
Someone told it to me as well, Aditya, and I think it's just stayed in my head.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, so basic but so real. That's the
Yes,
reality.
so I mean, he was obviously hinting at that, write a book which people feel like picking. Don't write a book which nobody wants to. Even if you have the best content, don't write a book which people will not pick up. So.
No Anurag Kashyap movie, only Karan Johar. Right, guys, any questions? Please feel free to go ahead. We have another few minutes to go for the session.
Thanks, Madhulika.
So, meanwhile, why don't you tell us more about, I mean, while waiting for other questions, I'm very curious to know what made you, because you're just getting started in your career and, you just published this book. What made you to take the sabbatical and decide to do this MBA? This is a full-time 2-year MBA, is it? Or a 1 year?
Sorry, made me choose INSEAD. I lost you in a bit, Aditya.
Made you take the sabbatical for and go out for an MBA? And I mean, uh,
Okay. So a global MBA has been on my desire to do or a list to do for a while. I could have or should have done it maybe 3 years back, but I don't regret it all. COVID, there was no point pursuing a degree abroad while we were in COVID. So the decision got a bit delayed. But there were three things that I felt I need to improve on. One, I have been very technically trained economist, and which means that my knowledge of finance, my knowledge of picking stocks, etc., has been very on the job, and I felt that I need to train myself in finance at some point. Secondly, I think what a very rigorous global business degree does to you is also make you uh, understand the world better. And I have had this feedback from other peers who've engaged in a program like that. That you know, if you want to be a future leader, engaging in something which is very rigorous, but at the same time test your own personality under pressure, test your own personality under stress. It helps to answer questions about what kind of leadership path do you want to walk on? Are you someone who does good under pressure? Are you someone who doesn't good under pressure? Are you someone who takes pride in making top 10%, top 1%? Or are you someone who is happier taking, bottom 50% to bottom 30%? So all these different kind of styles, I think it's a very practical course. I'm studying cases. I'm working, I think, from 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. every day. So this has been a to-do solely because I wanted to learn finance and I wanted to learn general management a little better, and build a global peer set as well. I felt like this was the right age to do. INSEAD is a very mature school, so the average age of the school is about 32. So which I kind of like fit well with. Yes, so maybe I would have done it earlier, but the career as an economist was going well, and we were in middle of COVID, so it just got delayed by a few years.
Super. So I see two questions here, Ankita, for you. The first one is from Anirudh. In fact, Anirudh is one of our members, and he's also recently written a book. So he's asking you, he's facing challenges in marketing his book. So beyond the first couple of 100 books, how to automate the marketing?
I know that I would love if the automation could be possible, but I don't think so. There's a way around it. I think you have to consistently nudge people and make reach more people. So something that I learned from a peer rather is that instead of going all out with marketing, just make sure you have a plan. You do a new activity every 15 days on your book. So as you said, I sold like first 500 copies really fast, and ever since then it's about, I don't know, like 4 copies a day, and that plateau does come in, and I think that is the right time when you start thinking of other things that can be done, but don't do them all at once. So do something every 2 weeks, and you have to continue the momentum uh, organically. I wish automation was possible, but I haven't been able to figure it out. So what I am doing is, I mean, there was some coffee brand which wanted to partner with the book. So that will go out one week. The next week, A plus listing on Amazon. I have not used it yet. That will go out. The discount on Amazon, I hadn't used it before. So that announcement went out like, I think, 10 days back. So I think all these new announcements coming from author, coming from your publisher, coming from different people at varied frequency just helps to keep the momentum going. Otherwise, it is very, very possible that you will sell all your books in like first month, first 1.5 months, and there's a huge, huge lull period. So I would just say just spread out your action, and eventually it depends on your content. Like for my content, I know that getting help from there is like two kind of audience. One is the student audience, people who are trying to understand economics for starting their career in it, which is which is likely to be very interested in. And the second is obviously the corporate audience, where people like having gifts for their clients. So eventually my plan is to be able to reach out to them. I mean, it's just that I'm not in the geography anymore, and all of this has taken a backseat. But you need to find your audience, and you need to actively keep pitching every 2 weeks in that.
Great.
There's another question on how to select a publisher first. I would say there are two factors that matter the most to me. One is the money that you're willing to spend. Every publisher, so someone would do it for 40,000, someone would do it for 2 lakhs, someone will do it for 4 lakhs. These are it's not very it's not in a range of like 10-15,000 difference where you can feel the indifference in price. It can vary a lot. So define how much you're willing to invest in the book, how much faith you have on the content, and how big you want to go. Number two is the timeline. So some of the very known names in the industry, in the publishing industry, would expect you to submit a draft to them, which they will review and they will come back to you. And the process could take about 6 months. And they will also need you to underwrite a few copies, saying that 1,000 copies I underwrite that will be sold. Because if you are a first time author, the publishing house is indeed taking a bet on you. They don't know you, they don't know if you will sell. So I think time and money are very important. In my case, I care about the process the company is following. So after I found companies that kind of fitted in my time range as well as money range, I evaluated companies on the process. I like if my publishing manager reaches out to me at a particular time of the day. The meetings are fixed well in advance. Randomness is lesser. So I think time, money, and I think it's worth reaching out to at least 10 of them before you decide on the one thing that will go out. Because what happens is that your book quality is not in your control after a while. If someone orders my book from Amazon and I read that on an Amazon review that someone ordered a book from Amazon and it looks like a Xerox copy of pages stuck together. Now that has never happened before. I've ordered copies for myself from Amazon and things have been fine. My peers have done it and things have been fine. But if something like that happens, you can raise it to your publisher, and how soon the publisher resolves it. In the name of the customer service, the publisher goes out and gives a second copy to that customer. That bit is very important to me, and in my case, my publisher does try to fix most of the things. So I wouldn't say that things like that don't happen, but you need a publisher who's high on customer service, after sales service, etc. So if those things matter to you, I think it's all about weighing the time, money, process, the kind of publishing manager you'd be working with day